June 2nd, 1944. 0400 hours, Southwick House, Hampshire, England. The world is asleep, but inside the library of a Georgian manor house tucked away in the English countryside, the air is thick with tobacco smoke and the stale smell of cold coffee. Outside, the grounds of Southwick House are silent, save for the crunch of sentry boots on gravel. Inside, the silence is different. It is the silence of men holding their breath while standing on the edge of a cliff. Standing before a wall covered in floor-to-ceiling synoptic charts is a man who looks less like a soldier and more like a weary university professor. He is tall, gangly, with a high forehead and a dour, Scottish expression that seems permanently etched with scepticism. This is Group Captain Stagg. Technically, he wears the uniform of the Royal Air Force, but he is a civilian at heart, a geophysicist, not a warrior. Yet, in this moment, James Stagg holds more power than any general, admiral or politician on the face of the earth. In the English Channel, just a few miles south, the greatest armada in human history is coiling like a spring. Operation Overlord. 156,000 men, 7,000 ships, 12,000 aircraft. They are engines idling, adrenaline pumping, waiting for the signal to launch the liberation of Europe. But they can't move, not until Stagg says so. Stagg taps the glass of a barometer. The needle quivers. It's dropping. To understand the weight on this man's shoulders, you have to understand the sheer fragility of the invasion plan. D-Day isn't just about men and guns. It is a mathematical nightmare of tides, moon phases and visibility. The Allied High Command has a window of exactly 3 days, June 5th, 6th or 7th. The paratroopers need a late rising moon to see their drop zones but stay hidden during the approach. The naval landing craft need a low tide at dawn to spot the thousands of Rommel's asparagus, mines and steel obstacles planted by the Germans in the surf zone. If they land at high tide, the hulls will be ripped open before they even touch the sand. 3 days. If they miss this window, they have to wait 2 weeks. If they wait 2 weeks, the secret of the invasion might leak. The element of surprise will be gone. The war could drag on for another year. Stagg rubs his eyes. He hasn't slept properly in days. He turns to the chart table where a team of sleep-deprived meteorologists is frantically plotting data points. There are no satellites looking down from space. There are no computer models running million-variable simulations. In 1944, weather forecasting is a dark art. It relies on scattered reports from lonely ships in the Atlantic, weather stations in neutral Ireland, and reconnaissance flights risking death to fly into storms. It is manual, analogue, and terrifyingly imprecise. Report from the HMS Hoste, a junior officer mutters, sliding a piece of paper across the mahogany table. Barometric pressure falling rapidly, wind veering south-southwest. Stagg frowns. He looks at the chart. The lines, isobars, are drawn in grease pencil. They are bunching together tightly over the North Atlantic. In meteorology, tight lines mean wind. Lots of it. For months, the Allied commanders have been optimistic. The Americans, led by the confident Colonel Donald Yates of the US Army Air Force, have been looking at historical averages. It's June, they argue. The English Channel in June is a millpond. We'll have clear skies and calm seas. Stagg looks at the fresh data from the Hoste. He looks at the observations coming in from Blacksod Point in Ireland. The historical averages are lying. A massive low-pressure system, a depression, is forming off the coast of Newfoundland. It is deepening, gathering energy and barreling across the Atlantic like a freight train. And it is aiming directly for Normandy. The door to the library opens. The chatter stops. Enter General Dwight D. Eisenhower, the Supreme Allied Commander. He is flanked by his Chief of Staff, General Walter Bedell Smith. Eisenhower looks tired. He is chain-smoking as always. He carries the weight of the free world in the bags under his eyes. "Well, Stagg," Eisenhower's voice is gravelly, "what have you got for me?" Stagg straightens his back. He is a man of science, not a man of comfort. He doesn't sugarcoat. "Sir," Stagg begins, his Scottish brogue cutting through the room. "The situation is deteriorating." He points to the chart. "The high-pressure ridge we were counting on is collapsing. This depression here..." His finger traces a dark curve west of Ireland. Is moving faster than anticipated. If it continues on this track, by June 5th, D-Day, the Channel will be experiencing force 6 winds, cloud base at 0 to 500 feet. The room goes cold. Force 6 winds mean waves of 5 to 7 feet. That's enough to swamp the swimming DD tanks instantly. It's enough to make the landing craft vomit-inducing torture chambers for the infantry. Cloud base 0, General Bedell Smith asks sharply. That grounds the bombers. Yes, sir, Stagg replies. Visual bombing will be impossible. The paratroopers will be scattered. The naval bombardment will be inaccurate. The American meteorologists shift uncomfortably. They want to argue. They want to say that the storm might turn north, that the Azorian high might push it away. But the data from the Atlantic is becoming undeniable. Eisenhower stares at the map. He is a man who deals in logistics, in tonnage, in division strength. He is used to problems he can solve with more trucks, more bullets, more men. But he cannot shoot the weather. He cannot flank a storm system. He looks at Stagg. Is there any chance it misses us? There is always a chance, General, Stagg says, measuring his words carefully. But right now, the odds are heavily against it. If you launch on the 5th, you are launching into a catastrophe. Silence descends on Southwick House. You can hear the rain starting to tap against the tall sash windows, the vanguard of the coming chaos. For the soldiers waiting in the marshalling yards, checking their rifles and writing final letters home, the weather is just a nuisance. They don't know that 1,000 miles away, a vortex of air is deciding their fate. They don't know that the man standing between them and a massacre isn't a general, but a civilian with a grease pencil. Stagg feels the eyes of the most powerful men in the military boring into him. He knows that if he is wrong, if he predicts a storm and the sun shines, he will go down in history as the man who lost the war. The invasion will be delayed, the tides will turn, and the Nazis will have 2 more weeks to fortify the beaches. But if he says go, and the storm hits, the bodies of thousands of young Americans, British and Canadians will wash up on the French coast, victims not of German bullets but of the Atlantic Ocean. Eisenhower takes a long drag of his cigarette. Keep watching it, Stagg. I want an update every 6 hours. As the general leaves, the atmosphere in the library shifts from tension to dread. Stagg turns back to his charts. The lines are moving, the storm is coming, and the argument between the British and American weather teams is about to explode. June 3rd, 1944. 1400 hours. The library, Southwick House. If the English Channel is a cauldron, the library at Southwick House is a pressure cooker with the lid welded shut. The room is choked with the blue haze of cigarette smoke. Teletype machines clatter incessantly in the corner, spitting out streams of coded numbers from weather stations as far away as Iceland and the Azores. To an outsider, the scene looks like a chaotic academic seminar, but this is a battlefield. On one side of the mahogany table sits Group Captain Stagg and his British colleague, CKM Douglas. They are the pessimists. They are looking at the developing low-pressure system in the Atlantic, now designated L5, and seeing a monster. Their methods are grounded in the chaotic fluid dynamics of the North Atlantic. They trust the fresh data coming from the lone reconnaissance aircraft struggling against the jet stream. On the other side are the Americans led by Colonel Donald Yates and his chief forecaster Irving P. Crick. They are the optimists, and they are furious. Crick is a celebrity meteorologist from Caltech. Before the war, he made a fortune predicting weather for Hollywood movie shoots. His method is the analog system. He believes that weather repeats itself. If the atmospheric pressure maps today look like they did on June 3, 1924, then the weather tomorrow will be the same as it was on June 4, 1924. It is a system built on historical precedent, on the statistical likelihood that the Atlantic behaves in predictable cycles. It's a blip, Stagg. The argument has been raging for hours. The American team is pointing to a ridge of high pressure near the Azores. According to their historical charts, this ridge should act as a shield, pushing the approaching storm north toward Iceland, leaving the channel clear for the invasion on the 5th. The Azorian high is strong, an American major insists, tapping a chart from 40 years ago. It will hold. We'll have a window. Stagg looks at the man, then at the window. Outside, the sky is turning a bruised purple. The wind is already rattling the sash frames. The Atlantic doesn't care about your history books, Stagg says, his voice low and dangerous. This isn't a movie set in California. This is the North Atlantic. And L5 is not moving north. It's deepening. He slams a fresh synoptic chart onto the table. It shows the isobars of the depression tightening like a noose around the British Isles. Look at the pressure drop at Blacksod Point, Stagg demands. It's fallen 4 millibars in 3 hours. That is not a ridge holding. That is a storm accelerating. The tension is unbearable. General Eisenhower has demanded a single, unified forecast. He cannot have the British saying, "Stop," and the Americans saying, "Go." If the meteorologists can't agree, the Supreme Commander is paralysed. Yates, the American colonel, is caught in the middle. He respects Stagg, but his own men are telling him that the British are being overly cautious, that they are defeatist. The political stakes are massive. If the Americans are right and Stagg cancels the invasion, the US generals will view it as a British failure of nerve. If Stagg is right and they launch, the blood of the 101st Airborne will be on American hands. Stagg feels the isolation. He is a civilian in uniform, surrounded by men who believe they can will the weather into submission. He retreats to his own thoughts, staring at the complex web of lines. He knows the science of the era is primitive. They are trying to predict the behaviour of a chaotic fluid system using pencil and paper. It is like trying to catch a bullet with a butterfly net. But Stagg has an instinct that the analogue method lacks. He can feel the rhythm of the weather, and the rhythm is wrong. The sequence of lows coming across the Atlantic is speeding up. The fair weather intervals between storms are getting shorter. 21:30 hours. The conference room. The Supreme Commanders gather again. The room smells of wet wool and anxiety. Eisenhower sits at the head of the table. To his right is Air Chief Marshal Tedder. To his left, the ground commander, General Bernard Montgomery. Monty is itching to go. He has his troops primed. He believes that the momentum of the invasion is more important than the weather. "I'm ready to go, even if it's raining pitchforks," Montgomery had said earlier. But Montgomery isn't the one who has to land 5,000 ships on a hostile shore. Admiral Ramsay, the naval commander, is grim. He knows what a Force 5 gale does to a landing craft. It swamps them. It breaks their backs. Stagg walks in. He looks exhausted. He has spent the last hour hammering out a compromise with the Americans, or rather, bludgeoning them with the reality of the barometer readings. Eisenhower looks up. "Well, Stagg, do we go on the 5th? The room goes silent. The only sound is the wind, which is now audibly howling around the eaves of Southwick House. Nature, it seems, is finally taking Stagg's side. "Sir," Stagg says, his voice steady, "the situation has not improved. The depression L5 is moving rapidly towards the Orkneys. It is dragging a complex series of fronts across the channel." He pauses, letting the gravity of the words sink in. "For Monday, June 5th, we predict low cloud, high winds and rough seas. Force 5 to 6 in the channel. Cloud base 500 feet to 0. Montgomery shifts in his chair. "Can the Air Forces operate?" Stagg turns to Air Chief Marshal Lee Mallory. "No, sir, not effectively. Visual spotting for naval gunfire will be impossible. The bombers won't find their targets." Ramsay speaks up. "And the landings? Can we get the men ashore?" "It will be highly hazardous, Admiral," Stagg replies. "The surf will be high. The risk of swamping is significant." Eisenhower rubs his temples. The weight of the decision is crushing. 150,000 men are already on the ships. Some have been sealed in their marshalling areas for days. To bring them back now would be a logistical nightmare. It would damage morale. It would risk security leaks. But to send them into a storm. Eisenhower looks at the window. The rain is lashing against the glass now. The calm that the American historical charts predicted has been obliterated by the reality of the present. "The forecast for the 5th is unacceptable," Eisenhower says quietly. He looks around the table. He is looking for someone to offer an alternative, a reason to risk it. But the faces of his commanders are set in stone. Even Montgomery is silent. "We have to postpone," Eisenhower says. The words hang in the air like smoke. Postpone 24 hours. The order goes out. Recall. It is a logistical spasms of epic proportions. Destroyers at sea have to turn back, battling the rising waves. Convoys that have already left the southern ports of England are radioed to reverse course. The men on the ships, sick with nerves and seasickness, are told they have to wait. Stagg leaves the conference room. He should feel relieved. He has stopped a disaster. But he feels only dread. By postponing the 5th, they have burned one of their 3 possible dates. They now have only the 6th and the 7th. If the storm doesn't break, if L5 stalls over the North Sea, or if another depression follows behind it, the invasion will have to be cancelled until mid-June, or worse, July. Stagg walks back to the library. The American team is quiet now. The analogue argument is dead. The storm is here. But now Stagg has a new problem. A new piece of data has just come in from a ship 600 miles west of Ireland. It's a single reading, a slight rise in pressure, a tiny insignificant bump in the isobar lines behind the cold front of the storm. To anyone else, it's noise. To James Stagg, staring at the chart with burning eyes, it looks like something else. It looks like a gap, a keyhole. He grabs his caliper. He measures the distance between the front and the next system. "Get me the latest from the Azores," he barks at a startled lieutenant, "and get me the upper air soundings from the reconnaissance flight." The Americans look up. Stagg is leaning over the table, his face inches from the paper. He is looking for a miracle in the math. He is looking for the eye of the needle. June 4th, 1944. 600 hours. The English Channel. The storm that James Stagg predicted has arrived with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. What was supposed to be D-Day, the day of liberation, breaks not with the roar of artillery, but with the howl of a force 7 gale. The English Channel, usually a choppy but navigable stretch of water, has transformed into a chaotic washing machine of grey foam and stinging spray. Waves the size of 2-story houses are crashing against the hulls of the invasion fleet. Out in the assembly areas, the order to recall has turned into a nautical nightmare. Thousands of ships, landing craft, destroyers, minesweepers, are trying to reverse course in blinding rain and heaving seas. On board the USS Ancon, the command ship for the Omaha Beach landings, the mood is funereal. Men who have spent months training, weeks in isolation, and hours writing final letters are now being told to stand down. They are packed into the holds like sardines, vomiting into paper bags as the ships pitch and roll violently. The stench of diesel, sickness, and wet wool is suffocating. "It's a goddamn mess, a bosun growls, watching a landing craft infantry, nearly collide with a destroyer in the gloom. "If we'd gone today, we'd be swimming to France." Back at Southwick House, General Eisenhower stands by the window of his trailer camp, affectionately known as Shellburst. The rain is hammering the metal roof like shrapnel. The wind is bending the trees in the park nearly double. He watches the storm and feels a strange, terrifying mixture of relief and dread. Relief, because Stagg was right. If he had listened to the optimists, if he had let the go order stand for June 5th, the invasion force would be at the bottom of the channel right now. The landing craft would have capsized. The paratroopers would have been blown miles off course. The air support would be grounded. It would have been the greatest military disaster in history. But the dread is heavier. They have used one of their 3 days. The clock is ticking. The tides waits for no man, not even the Supreme Allied Commander. If the weather doesn't break by tomorrow, June 6th, they will have to stand down for 2 weeks. 2 weeks of keeping 150,000 men sealed in camps? Impossible. The secret will leak. The Germans will spot the build-up. The element of surprise, the only advantage the Allies truly have, will be gone. Across the Channel, the storm is having a very different effect. 10 o'clock hours, La Roche-Guyon, France. Headquarters of Army Group B, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, the Desert Fox, stands on the terrace of the Duc de la Rochefoucauld's castle. He looks out at the River Seine, swollen and grey under the driving rain. Rommel is the man charged with defending the Atlantic Wall. He has spent months fortifying the beaches, planting millions of mines, flooding the fields behind Utah and Omaha. He knows the Allies are coming. He can feel it. But he looks at the weather report in his hand. Wind, force 7. Sea state, very rough. Cloud base, low. Visibility, poor. Rommel smiles. To a military man, this weather report is better than a panzer division. No sane commander would launch an amphibious invasion in a storm like this. The tides are wrong, the air cover is impossible, and the seas are lethal. The invasion will not come in the next few days, he tells his Chief of Staff, Hans Speidel. The enemy is not stupid. They need calm seas and a full moon. Rommel is so confident in the weather that he makes a decision that will haunt history. He decides to go home. It is his wife Lucy's 50th birthday on June 6th. He has bought her a pair of grey suede shoes in Paris and he wants to deliver them personally. Plus, he needs to meet with Hitler in Berchtesgaden to beg for more panzer divisions. "I will leave for Herrlingen immediately," Rommel says, buttoning his greatcoat. "The weather is our greatest ally right now. We can relax." He gets into his staff car. The Hawk speeds away through the rain-slicked streets of France, heading east, away from the beaches. Behind him, the German 7th Army relaxes. The alert status is lowered. Officers cancel training exercises. In bunkers from Cherbourg to Caen, soldiers take off their boots and play cards. The logic is ironclad. The weather is too bad for an invasion. They don't know about James Stagg. They don't know that on the other side of the storm, a man is staring at a barometer that has just done something peculiar. 1800 hours, Southwick House. Stagg is back in the library. The room is quiet now. The American team has stopped arguing about historical averages. The violence of the storm outside has settled the debate about the analogue method. Reality has won. But Stagg isn't looking at the storm raging outside. He is looking at a single report from a weather ship stationed 600 miles out in the Atlantic. The ship, tossing in 50-foot waves, has radioed in a pressure reading. It's rising. "Check it again," Stagg snaps at his assistant. "Is that a transmission error?" "No, sir. Confirmed. Pressure is rising behind the front." Stagg grabs his grease pencil. He draws a new line on the chart. He sees it now. A cold front is passing over the channel right now. That's the rain hitting the window. But behind it, there is a gap. A ridge of high pressure is squeezing in between the current storm and the next depression. It's not a clearing. It's not good weather. It's a barely there pause. A stutter in the atmospheric violence. "How long?" Yates asks, looking over Stagg's shoulder. Stagg measures the distance on the map. He calculates the wind speed. 24 hours, Stagg whispers, maybe 36, starting tomorrow night. It is a terrifyingly small window. It means launching the invasion while the storm is still raging, trusting that it will clear exactly when the ships reach the French coast. If the front slows down, the ships will hit the beach in a gale. If the next depression speeds up, the paratroopers will jump into a hurricane. "It's a gamble," Yates says, wiping sweat from his forehead. "It's the only chance we have," Stagg replies. "If we don't take this gap, we wait 2 weeks, and the general won't wait." Stagg knows what he has to do. He has to walk into a room full of the most powerful men in the world, men who are currently listening to the wind howl like a banshee, and tell them that it's going to stop. He has to tell them to launch the greatest armada in history into the teeth of a gale, based on a single ship's reading and a hunch about a high-pressure ridge. He puts on his cap. He gathers his charts. His hands are shaking just a little. "Let's go," he says to Yates. "The general is waiting." Outside, the rain intensifies, drumming a frantic rhythm against the glass. It sounds like applause, or maybe it sounds like nails being driven into a coffin. Stagg steps out into the corridor, walking toward the conference room where the fate of the 20th century is about to be decided. June 4th, 1944. 21:30 hours, Southwick House. The conference room is a study in contrasts. Outside, the gale is at its peak, rattling the blackout shutters with a violence that makes conversation difficult. Inside, the air is still, heavy with the smell of wet wool uniforms and stale coffee. 12 men sit around the polished table. They are the architects of the free world's military might: Eisenhower, Montgomery, Tedder, Ramsey, Leake, Mallory, Bedell-Smith. Between them, they command millions of men and thousands of machines. But right now, they look like passengers on a sinking ship, staring at the floor, listening to the rain lash against the roof. The door opens. Group Captain James Stagg enters, followed by Colonel Yates. Every head turns. The silence is absolute. Eisenhower crushes a cigarette into an overflowing ashtray. He looks at Stagg with eyes that are red-rimmed and exhausted. "Tell me it's not true, Stagg. Tell me this storm isn't going to last forever." Stagg walks to the map stand. He pins up the latest chart. It looks like a mess of swirling lines, a chaotic whirlpool of isobars. But Stagg points to a small, almost invisible wedge of space behind the thick black line of the cold front. "Gentlemen," Stagg says, his voice surprisingly steady, "since our last conference there have been rapid and unexpected developments." He taps the map. "A cold front is currently passing over the channel. That is the rain you hear now. However," he pauses, "behind this front, a ridge of high pressure is building faster than anticipated. We predict that the rain will stop within 3 to 4 hours. The cloud cover will break. The winds will drop to force 3 or 4. He looks around the room. The commanders are staring at him as if he just spoke in tongues. "A break?" General Bedell-Smith asks, skepticism dripping from his voice. "For how long?" 36 hours, Stagg replies. "Starting tomorrow morning. It will be a fair interval. Not perfect, but operational." "And after that?" "After that," Stagg says, pointing to a dark mass of lines further out in the Atlantic, "another depression arrives. The weather will close in again by the evening of June 6th. It will be rough." The room erupts. 36 hours. It is the eye of the needle. It is a terrifyingly narrow window. If the invasion force is delayed by even a few hours, the second storm will hit while the troops are still on the beaches, cutting them off from supply ships. They will be stranded. Air Chief Marshal Lee Mallory, commanding the Air Forces, shakes his head. "It's too tight, Ike. If the cloud base doesn't lift, my bombers can't see the targets. The paratroopers will be scattered all over Normandy." Admiral Ramsey, the naval commander, leans forward. "Force 4 is marginal for the landing craft. The men will be sick. The timing will be off. But," he looks at Eisenhower, "we can land. It's possible." Then General Montgomery speaks. He is wearing his trademark beret, his face sharp and eager. "I say go," he barks, slapping the table. "We can't keep the men bottled up any longer. The longer we wait, the more likely the Germans are to spot us. I say go." The room falls silent again. All eyes turn to Eisenhower. The Supreme Commander stands up. He walks to the window, peering through a crack in the blackout curtains. Outside, the storm is still howling. Trees are bending. Rain is sheeting down. To order an invasion now feels like madness. It feels like sending 150,000 men to their deaths based on a hunch about a ridge of air pressure that no one can see. Eisenhower knows that if Stagg is wrong, the invasion fails. If the invasion fails, the war in Europe could drag on for years. The Soviets might take Berlin alone. The map of the world will change forever, and he, Dwight D. Eisenhower, will be the man who destroyed the Allied armies. He paces the room, hands clasped behind his back, chin down. "The question," Eisenhower says softly, "is just how long can you hang this operation on the end of a limb and let it hang there?" He turns back to Stagg. "You're sure about this fair interval, Stagg?" "As sure as we can be, sir," Stagg replies. "The data is consistent. The ridge is there." Eisenhower looks at the faces of his friends, his colleagues. He sees fear. He sees hope. He sees the crushing weight of history. He closes his eyes for a second. The rain taps against the glass. Tap, tap, tap. He opens them. The decision is made. "I don't like it," Eisenhower says, his voice gravelly but firm. "But there it is." He looks at Ramsey. "Okay, let's go." The words are simple, quiet, but they act like an electric shock. "Let's go," Montgomery echoes. The room explodes into action. Telephones are snatched up, aides rush out the doors. The paralysis is broken. The machinery of war, stalled for 24 hours, grinds back into motion. June 5th, 1944. 04:15 hours. A final confirmation meeting is held. The storm outside is still raging, but Stagg points to the barometer. "It's rising, sir. The front is passing." Eisenhower nods. He signs the order. Across the south of England, the teletypes chatter. In the wet, miserable harbours, signal lamps flash through the gloom. On thousands of ships, engines cough into life, spewing diesel smoke into the rain. The men on the ships look up at the grey, angry sky. They don't see a break. They see a gale. They think the generals have lost their minds. "We're going?" a soldier on a landing craft whispers to his sergeant. "In this?" "We're going," the sergeant replies, grimly checking his rifle. Unbeknownst to them, the crazy weather prediction has already won the first battle. Across the Channel, the German 7th Army is sleeping. Rommel is in Germany. The beaches are quiet. The defenders are listening to the storm and thinking, they'll never come tonight. But they are coming. Riding the slim, invisible edge of a high-pressure ridge, the liberation of Europe has begun. June 6th, 1944. 05:50 hours. Omaha Beach, Sector Dog Green. The dawn that breaks over the Normandy coast is not the golden sunrise of propaganda posters. It is a bruised, sullen grey. The sea is still heaving, a churning mess of 4-foot waves that slap angrily against the concrete obstacles of the Atlantic Wall. Inside bunker WN-62, Major Werner Pluskat of the German 352nd Infantry Division raises his binoculars. He is tired. The storm has been howling for days, and the constant sound of wind against concrete is maddening. He scans the horizon, expecting to see nothing but the usual empty, angry ocean. Instead, he drops his binoculars. His hands are shaking. "My God," he whispers. He rubs his eyes and looks again. The horizon is gone. In its place is a solid wall of steel. Ships, thousands of them. Battleships, destroyers, transport vessels, landing craft, stretching as far as the eye can see, emerging from the morning mist like a phantom city. He grabs the field telephone. "It's the invasion," he screams to headquarters. "There must be 10,000 ships." "Calm down, Pluskat," the voice on the other end drawls. "The weather is too bad. No one invades in this weather. Are you sure they aren't seagulls?" "Seagulls?" Pluskat roars. "If they are seagulls, they are exploding." At that moment, the battleship USS Texas opens fire. The horizon lights up with a flash of orange. Seconds later, the sound of the 14-inch shells tears through the air like a ripping canvas. The ground shakes. The Germans are caught completely off guard. The 7th Army is in disarray. Rommel is hundreds of miles away in Germany. The panzer divisions are held in reserve, waiting for orders that won't come for hours. The uninvadable weather had lulled them into a fatal sleep, just as Stagg had hoped. 6:30 hours. The English Channel. On the landing craft approaching the beach, the reality of James Stagg's fair interval is a brutal physical experience. The sea is rough, borderline dangerous. Men are vomiting on their boots, their rifles, and each other. The landing craft are pitching violently, taking on water, but they are floating. If they had launched 24 hours earlier, during the height of the storm, these flat-bottomed boats would have capsized instantly. If they had waited 24 hours later, the next depression would have swallowed them whole. Above them, the sky is a patchwork of grey clouds and fleeting glimpses of blue. It is far from perfect bombing weather. The heavy bombers miss many of the beach defences at Omaha because of the cloud cover, but the fighter bombers, the Typhoons and P-47s, can see. They swoop down under the ceiling, strafing German columns rushing to the front. Stagg was right. The window is there. It is ragged, it is ugly, and it is terrifyingly small, but it is open. 10 o'clock hours, Southwick House. Back in the library, the mood is electric. The teletype machines are going berserk. Troops ashore at Utah, light resistance. Heavy fighting at Omaha, beachhead established. British troops moving inland at Gold and Sword. James Stagg stands by the window. He looks outside. The rain has stopped. The wind has dropped to a manageable breeze. The sun is actually trying to break through the overcast sky. He feels a hand on his shoulder. It's Colonel Yates. "You did it, Jimmy," the American says quietly. "You threaded the needle." Stagg nods slowly. He is too exhausted to smile. He knows that thousands of men are dying on those beaches right now. But he also knows that if he had been wrong, if he had given the go order for the 5th or the stop order for the 6th, the number of dead would be measured not in thousands, but in hundreds of thousands. The invasion would have failed. The aftermath. 2 weeks later, on June 19th, the great storm that Stagg had seen lurking in the long-range forecast finally hits the Channel. It is the worst summer storm in 40 years. It destroys the temporary Mulberry harbours the Allies built. It grounds the entire Air Force for 3 days. It stops all supply convoys. General Eisenhower, now in France, stands on the bluffs overlooking the wreckage of the harbour. He turns to his aide. "Thank God for Stagg," he says. If they had delayed the invasion on June 6th, the next available tidal window would have been June 19th. The fleet would have been at sea when that megastorm hit. The invasion force would have been annihilated. The war would have been lost in a single morning of hurricane-force winds. James Stagg's prediction, based on a single ship's reading, a primitive understanding of jet streams, and a gut feeling about a ridge of high pressure, saved the world. He was a civilian in a room full of generals. He had no gun, no tank, no airplane. His only weapon was a barometer, but with it he found the one day in a month of storms where the door to Europe could be kicked open. And as the sun sets over a liberated Normandy, the history books will record the generals' names in bold print. But in the fine print, written in the margins of the weather charts, is the story of the Scot who looked at a storm and saw a path to victory.